Okay, guys, so I just want to make this little video where I want to explain to you how to connect Tailwinds to your React app, right? This in particular is using npx create React app, right? RCA create or CRA create React app, and I'm just gonna walk you through it because this was something that I had a lot of bugs and a lot of issues with. So if you go to the Tailwinds website, right, there's going to be a list of options here as far as how you can install it. Now, what's going to happen is like for you to install Tailwinds, right, they give you the options of using Vite, using Post CSS, right, Tailwind CLI, framework guidelines, all this other stuff, right? What you're going to be using in order to connect it to your React app, and what I found worked for me, is a mix between using Post CSS and Tailwind CLI, but really in particular, you're going to focus on the Post CSS part. And then what you're going to do is you're going to want to run this line npm install tailwinds css tailwind css slash post css and post css, right? So what is post css? This is something that isn't really talked about, but I think is really important to mention. Post css is, I think, this node based module that allows you to create a specific file that converts the tailwind code that you write specifically in the class name, and then it outputs it into a css file that's into your application, so to say, right? And we're going to talk about how I did that later. You could see some tidbits here where it says script equals or build css post css da 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 da. Like basically, post css is something that you can configure to run before you actually start your application in your run lines, and then it basically builds out the or compiles out the tailwind css code that you write, and then works it into your app, right? So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna talk about this line, right? Add tailwind post CSS config, right? This was pretty confusing. I could show you this in my app here. You write this in the root, right? So I have it post CSS .config.mjs, right? And one way to test if it's working is you could write console.log quote unquote post CSS is processing. If it's processing, you will see it in your console log, right? Um, Let me control C and restart this. Let me see if it's up there. npm start. But it should show up in your console log. I know it's working in my console log specifically because I have it written up here. Yeah, post CSS is processing. Yeah, so it doesn't display in the console there, but it does display in like your PowerShell terminal where you run it, right? So look, post CSS is processing. Error loading post CSS plugin failed. Cannot find Tailwind CSS post CSS. Just ignore that. Ignore that because we know it's working. I think it's something else. We'll figure that out. But essentially, once you have like this console log post CSS processing this function here, right? Then you want to do your what's it called? You want to do your config. So if you go back into the instruction manual here, right, it tells you at import Tailwind CSS. This you want to put in your index.js, right? So where's index.js? Index.js is in root. Index.js. I'm putting index.css. Boom, right? I import the index.css. In the import.css, I have at import tailwind CSS. I also have these two here, tailwind base, and then tailwind component and tailwind utilities. You can add these in. I don't necessarily know 100%. I'm still toying with it, but add these in, right? And then obviously it tells you npm run dev right here in the Tailwind documentation. But the thing is, when it says npm run dev, right, for you here in the more recent version, you use npm start. But you're gonna notice here that like I have a different code here in my scripts. I have build colon css, right, where it says post css src slash index.css, right? So I'm running post css, the command line or the commandlet. Then I'm inputting in, right, the source index.css. and then I have a -o tag, and then output CSS for my output, right? And in my index.js, I'll circle back over to index.js. Where is it? Index.js here. I have import right here on the right window, import dot slash output CSS, right? So I have it written up so that whenever the output is written, it's imported in and it's looked for and it's imported, right? Okay, cool. So this line, you want to put this in your build CSS so that when you deploy it, like, or for me, I deploy with AWS and port 443 and all that stuff, right? It runs the build so that it actually picks it up and runs it. But like for the npm start, which is the command script that you use to actually run it in a development stage, right? You want to import it by using npm run, right? You see npm run, and then watch colon css, and then there's an and react. There's an symbol, right? So this conjoins these two npm commands, which is then followed with a react script start, right? So those are like the two commands that you use to essentially start up your app and to run your app. And then at the same time, you have the build quote npm run watch colon css and react scripts build, right? So these 4 lines here, these 4 lines right here are the 4 lines, the top 4 are the 4 lines that you need to change in your start build in your scripts area for your package.json. And this allows you to effectively tell your terminal, hey, run post css, look for the .mjs file, your what's it called, your postcss.config.mjs, because that's what postcss does. Postcss looks for this file and then runs it, and then this installs your Tailwind CSS, so it runs automatically, and then that generates your output CSS for every piece of CSS that's in your DOM tree, for every use of Tailwind that's in your DOM tree. So now I can go into anywhere in my React app basically and import Tailwind code. Right now I have this elemental box, right, for this dating app that I'm working on. And in the dating app, I have this line here where I wrote like H1. I got this directly from Tailwind's their website to check it, right? H1 class name text hyphen 3x1 3x1, right? Space font hyphen bold, and specifically the underline part, right? Originally this wasn't working before, but now it's working. So now I know, okay, cool, my Tailwinds is connected, and I can basically just import or incorporate Tailwind code into my app basically without having to like stress over it or whatever. And it's good too because I have like it set up where the div is supposed to like stretch up to 200 px, and like before, like this area used to be like super small, but now it like fits up to par. And what I can do is I can remove this underline code because I know like it's working. But yeah, we're done. This is basically just grab this out of here. Yeah, get rid of that. But yeah, no, Tailwind works now. It's connected. You're good. Again, at first I was like, what's going wrong? What I think happened with like it saying like Tailwind error is, again, play around with it later on. I plan on playing around with it later on. In my index, I have at Tailwind base, and I think that causes the error that I saw before. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna comment this out just for testing. I figured this out last night. So I'm just gonna play around with it and see. Actually, I'll delete this terminal and I'll make a new terminal just so that it's fresh. Npm start. And look, it's running. Tailwind post CSS processing, error loading, post CSS plugin, something, and then it just overwrites it completely, just to like start up the app, and then show me some ESLint where it's like, hey, like you have this error here, you didn't do this, some redundancies, whatnot. But yeah, sorry guys, I guess the lighting's bad, so you guys can't see me all too well. But yeah, no, that's basically how you build out your Tailwind. I'm gonna pull up some of the windows to make sure this is bigger. But yeah, you can see here at the top I have import Tailwind CSS, and if I pull up the app, it's still running. So these three, I don't think you need these three lines. I think you just need the import Tailwind CSS as you see on the website. You need your post CSS config file here, right? You need the most up-to-date version of React scripts. So you can write npm install React scripts, right? You want to update that. And then at the same time too, you just want to make sure here, this specifically is the most important part. In your build CSS, your watch CSS, and if you look at it, you say npm run, and this runs watch CSS, which is this one right here, boom, watch CSS, right? And then React script start. And then that starts up your app, and that gets everything running. So that's how you solve it.